Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. It's time to talk about something truly terrifying, the possibility of a full-blown war in Europe. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't Europe supposed to be all fancy cheese, tiny cars and universal healthcare? And you'd be right. Well, mostly. Europe is indeed known for its rich culture, beautiful architecture and yes, the delicious cheese. But there's another side to this continent that often gets overshadowed. Beneath that charming veneer lies a history of conflict so messy it'd make a plate of spaghetti look organized. From the World Wars to the Cold War, Europe has seen its fair share of turmoil. Recently things have been getting tense between Russia and, well, pretty much everyone else. The geopolitical landscape is shifting, not in a good way. We're talking military build-ups, angry speeches, and enough finger-pointing to make a kindergarten teacher lose their mind. It's a situation that's escalating quickly, and the stakes couldn't be higher. It's like the Cold War never ended, just took a really long coffee break and came back with a vengeance. The old rivalries are resurfacing, and the new ones are just as dangerous. Now, I'm no Henry Kissinger, but even I can tell you this isn't great. The potential for conflict is real, and the consequences could be devastating. The big question is, how did we get here? What series of events led us to this precarious point in history? Understanding the past is crucial to navigating the future, and more importantly, where do we go from here? What steps can be taken to de-escalate the situation and prevent a full-blown conflict? Buckle up, buttercups, because we're diving headfirst into the tangled web of Russia-Europe relations. It's a complex story with no easy answers, but it's one we need to understand if we're to have any hope of a peaceful future. Let's rewind the clock a bit, shall we? Imagine a world where the ticking of the clock takes us back through the annals of history, unraveling the intricate tapestry of time. Russia and Europe have a relationship that's more complicated than a Tolstoy novel. It's a saga filled with drama, intrigue, and a fair share of betrayals and alliances. We're talking centuries of wars, revolutions, and enough shifting alliances to make your head spin. Each conflict reshaped borders, altered destinies, and left an indelible mark on the pages of history. From the Napoleonic Wars to the Crimean War, these two have been locking horns for longer than most of us have been alive. These wars were not just battles of armies, but clashes of ideologies and ambitions. Then came the big one, World War I, a war so devastating it was dubbed the Great War, forever changing the landscape of Europe. This continent-wide brawl left millions dead and Europe in ruins. Cities were reduced to rubble, and the social fabric was torn apart, leading to a period of immense suffering and rebuilding. It also paved the way for the rise of the Soviet Union, a communist superpower that would go on to dominate Eastern Europe for decades. The Soviet influence reshaped the political and social structures of the region. Cue the Cold War, a decades-long standoff between the Soviet Union and the West, marked by suspicion, paranoia, and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. This period saw an arms race, espionage, and a battle for global supremacy. Fast forward to 1991, the Berlin Wall falls, the Soviet Union collapses, and everyone breathes a collective sigh of relief. The end of the Cold War was seen as a new dawn for peace and cooperation. But like a bad horror movie franchise, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water, tensions started bubbling up again. Old wounds reopened and new conflicts emerged, reminding us that history often repeats itself. Russia, feeling increasingly isolated and surrounded by NATO expansion, began flexing its military muscles. This resurgence of power dynamics has led to a new era of geopolitical chess, with each move closely watched by the world. Now, let's talk about NATO, shall we? This organization has been a cornerstone of Western defense for decades. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO for short, was formed in 1949 as a military alliance between the United States, Canada, and several Western European countries. It was a time when the world was recovering from the ravages of World War II, and the threat of Soviet expansion loomed large. Think of it as a club where everyone agrees to defend each other if one of them gets attacked. This principle is known as collective defense, and it's the heart of NATO's founding treaty. Its main purpose? To deter Soviet aggression and prevent another devastating war in Europe. The idea was simple: an attack on one member would be considered an attack on all, ensuring a united front against any potential aggressor. After the Cold War ended, NATO didn't exactly pack up and go home. Instead, It adapted to new security challenges, including terrorism and cyber threats. Instead, it expanded eastward, welcoming former Soviet satellite states into its ranks. Countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic joined, seeking security and stability under NATO's umbrella. This, as you can imagine, didn't sit too well with Russia, who saw it as a betrayal and a direct threat to its security. The expansion was perceived as encroaching on Russia's sphere of influence. NATO argues that it's a purely defensive alliance, promoting peace and stability in Europe. It conducts peacekeeping missions and provides a platform for dialogue and cooperation among its members. Russia, however, sees it as a relic of the Cold War, a tool for American imperialism and a threat to its own interests. This perspective fuels ongoing tensions and mistrust between NATO and Russia. It's a classic case of he said, she said, but with much higher stakes. The future of European security and global stability often hangs in the balance, making NATO's role as the shield of the West more crucial than ever. In understanding the delicate balance of power in Europe, we must consider the nuclear arsenal held by various nations. Nuclear weapons have been a critical factor in international relations since their inception in the mid-20th century. They serve not only as tools of destruction, but also as powerful deterrents. Let's start with Russia. As of the latest estimates, Russia possesses approximately 6,375 nuclear warheads. This makes it the country with the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. The roots of this vast arsenal trace back to the Cold War era, where the Soviet Union engaged in an intense arms race with the United States. Despite the end of the Cold War, Russia has maintained and modernized its nuclear capabilities, viewing them as essential to its national security. Moving westward, we find that several European countries also possess nuclear weapons, albeit in much smaller quantities. The United Kingdom, for instance, has around 225 nuclear warheads. France, another key player, maintains a stockpile of approximately 290 warheads. Both nations developed their nuclear arsenals during the Cold War and have since continued to evolve their capabilities to meet modern threats. It's important to note the historical context here. The presence of nuclear weapons in Europe has always been a point of contention. During the Cold War, the deployment of American nuclear missiles in Western Europe was a significant factor in the tension between NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Today, the landscape has shifted, but the underlying issues remain. The expansion of NATO and the continued presence of US nuclear weapons in Europe are seen by Russia as direct threats to its security. Current geopolitical implications are profound. The existence of these arsenals means that any conflict involving these nations carries the risk of escalation to a nuclear level. This is why arms control agreements, such as the New START treaty between the US and Russia, are so critical. They aim to limit the number of deployed strategic nuclear warheads and promote transparency between the two largest nuclear powers. In conclusion, the nuclear weapons held by Russia and European countries are more than just statistics. They represent a complex web of historical legacies, strategic calculations, and geopolitical tensions. The balance of nuclear power in Europe continues to shape the security landscape, influencing decisions and actions on both sides of the continent. As we move forward, the role of diplomacy and international agreements will be crucial in managing this delicate balance and preventing the unthinkable. The stakes are incredibly high, and the future of global stability may very well depend on the choices made by these nuclear-armed states. While NATO has played a significant role in maintaining stability in Europe, it has faced its share of challenges and criticisms. One of the most glaring issues has been its inability to prevent conflicts in certain regions. Take the Balkans, for example. The Bosnian War in the early 1990s exposed NATO's initial hesitance and lack of a cohesive strategy. It was only after years of brutal conflict and international outcry that NATO intervened decisively, with Operation Deliberate Force in 1995. Another notable conflict was the Kosovo War, where NATO's intervention was seen as both a necessity and a failure in diplomacy. The airstrikes in 1999 were controversial and raised questions about the alliance's decision-making processes. Internal disagreements among member states have also plagued NATO. The 2003 invasion of Iraq is a prime example. While the United States and the United Kingdom were in favor, several key NATO members, including France and Germany, strongly opposed the intervention. This division highlighted the challenges of achieving consensus within a diverse alliance. More recently, the situation in Afghanistan has been a point of contention. NATO's involvement in the Afghan war, which lasted 2 decades, has been heavily criticized. The alliance struggled to establish a stable government and ensure lasting peace. The rapid collapse of the Afghan government in 2021, following the withdrawal of NATO forces, has been seen as a significant failure. Criticisms regarding NATO's strategic decisions are not new. Some argue that the alliance has overstepped its original mandate, particularly with its eastward expansion. This expansion has been perceived by Russia as a direct threat, contributing to heightened tensions in the current geopolitical landscape. Moreover, NATO's reliance on the United States for military power has led to an imbalance within the alliance. European members are often criticized for not contributing their fair share, leading to calls for increased defense spending and a more equitable distribution of responsibilities. Despite these challenges, it's important to recognize NATO's achievements. The alliance has successfully deterred major conflicts in Europe, provided a platform for dialogue, and adapted to new threats such as cyber warfare and terrorism. In conclusion, while NATO has faced numerous challenges and criticisms, it remains a cornerstone of European security. The alliance's ability to adapt and address its shortcomings will be crucial in navigating the complex security landscape of the 21st century. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, please like and subscribe for more comprehensive discussions on global security issues.